Hi everyone, my name is Salva Alavi and I'm a graduate student at the University of Houston. I'm pursuing my Master in Education in Gifted and Talented Education and I plan to graduate this December. My capstone project is about the possible benefits of teaching gifted curriculum, particularly the gifted English curriculum to non-gifted students. Let me start off by giving you a little bit of introduction. When you look at a classroom, any regular classroom at a public school, there are many different labels that we associate with certain kinds of students. Some of the labels are according to the student's socioeconomic backgrounds, such as at-risk students, students with low economic backgrounds, etc. Labels according to social and class status, such as students from the working class or the blue-collar families. There are also labels according to the racial and ethnic groups, such as African American or Asian. Some labels are also according to the intellectual level of the students. Some examples are English as a second language students, English language learners, students that are in the response to intervention, the RTI program, special education students, and perhaps there are many more. One label that is interesting to me is the name of gifted and talented. Mike Lambert wrote a journal article in 2010 in the Comprehensive Education Journal titled Gifted and Talented, a label too far. In this article, he observes that gifted students have long been claimed as part of professional and parental efforts to enhance their educational provision. In other words, they are provided with that one extra advantage of academics that they benefit immensely from. We will look at who, why, and how they are provided with these advantages later on. In this presentation, we will explain why teaching gifted curriculum to non-gifted students would be beneficial. I'm sure I'm not the only one who had this idea. Teachers are always thinking of ways to challenge their students, and this is an interesting connection that could potentially benefit non-gifted students in various ways. There's no doubt that gifted math curriculum or science curriculum can benefit non-gifted students. However, we will look at specifically how the English and language arts curriculum can help non-gifted students in their reading, writing, and research skills. I believe that by teaching gifted curriculum to non-gifted students, the overall student body at any given school can improve their academics, and we will look at how in the upcoming slides. As I researched this phenomena, 7 major themes surfaced through, and this makes up the main body of my presentation. The 7 themes that we will discuss are definition and qualities of the gifted and talented students, development of curriculum for the gifted and talented, teaching the skill of writing to non-gifted students, the identification and the evaluation process of gifted students and why non-gifted students are not identified, the role of social class and race within gifted education, which causes some students to be left out of the gifted programs, professional development of teachers, which is basically teacher training for gifted curriculum and instruction, and finally, the use of technology in instruction that connects both gifted and non-gifted students. Okay, now let's move on to our first theme, which is definition and qualities of the gifted and talented students. What is the state definition of gifted students? According to the National Association for Gifted Children, here's a definition of gifted and talented students for Texas. Gifted and talented student means a child or youth who performs at or shows the potential for performing at a remarkably high level of accomplishment when compared to others of the same age, experience, or environment, and who exhibits high performance capability in an intellectual, creative, or artistic area, possesses an unusual capacity for leadership, or excels in a specific academic field. Understanding the term of gifted is important because being called gifted opens up opportunities to prove oneself as such. Over the past 30 years, gifted students have been called many names such as highly able or exceptionally able. Lambert defines giftedness as being associated with domains of ability which foster and explain exceptional performance in varied fields of activities. He further explains that the gifted and talented term refers directly and unashamedly to the perceived nature of the learners themselves. We all know the importance of labels and its impacts. If I tell my student that he or she cannot do mathematics enough times, he or she will start believing me. Why don't we use this theory towards their own benefit and turn it positive? Why don't we let our non-gifted students know that they have the capacity to learn gifted curriculum? This way, we constantly push them towards improvement. As we study Texas' definition of giftedness, it is important to note that the definition of giftedness is not the same across the nation. There are variations within the state definitions of gifted and talented students. These definitions of giftedness are influenced by social, political, economic, and cultural factors. Examining the various definitions tells us the concept of giftedness is not just about high intellectual ability. There is so much more to giftedness. As the federal government states, there are 5 types of giftedness: intellectual, academic, visual and performing arts, leadership, and creativity. Understanding these types will help educators and teachers identify gifted students. Some traits of the gifted students, according to Van Tassel, Baska, and Stambo, are the capacity to learn at faster rates, the capacity to find, solve, and act on problems more readily, and the capacity to manipulate abstract ideas and make connections more easily. Having said that, these qualities can also be applied to non-gifted students in order to improve their academics, even partly, if not 100%. Intelligence is not black and white. It is a process through which giftedness can be nurtured. This process takes place in the brain. The brain has 4 major functions: physical, affective, cognitive, and intuitive. Barbara Clark says on page 22 to 23 of her textbook that giftedness can no longer be confined to cognitive function. It clearly must include all brain functions and their efficient and integrated use. Clark further argues that giftedness is developmental. On page 24, she says intelligence can be enhanced or inhibited by the interaction between the genetic pattern and the experiences provided by the environment. Developing giftedness does not rely on either nature or nurture separately, but a combination of both is required. As researchers have studied the gifted brain and the non-gifted brain, they have realized that giftedness can be developed through proper environmental stimulation. At birth, all brains have the basic features to promote intelligence. However, environmental influences help the brain experience growth in neural processes. Therefore, a gifted brain is a combination of generic blueprints as well as environmental influences. Our second theme is the development of curriculum for the gifted. Curriculum development is not an easy task. There are many factors that go into it, such as political, environmental, social, and technological. Renzulli and Reyes state in the article in 2009 that giftedness is not a state of being. It is not fixed and it does not reside in a chosen few over their lifetimes as a fixed entity. It is rather developmental. Now, this takes us back to the nature versus nurture debate, which we can leave for some other time. But it is definitely something to be observed and kept in mind while designing gifted curriculum. Since the qualities of gifted students is considered during curriculum design, it is important to understand that the enhanced abilities will benefit students of all intellectual levels. A little tweaking here and there might be required while adjusting the gifted curriculum to cater to the needs of non-gifted students. Hence, it is first important to understand the learning abilities of both gifted and regular students. Intellectual development is about unfolding genetic potential. Barbara Clark explains how the curriculum for the gifted should be in her 2013 book on page 26. She states, there are conditions needed to build the strong, integrated, flexible, complex brain we call gifted. Among them are the following: the provision of a variety of quality experiences from our early beginnings as the neural patterns and sequences are being formed. The development of the concepts of integration, choice, patterns, and sequences, starting with the child's early experiences. The provision of feedback throughout the acquisition of knowledge and skills, and the enrichment of the environment and the experiences that the environment provides so that the growth of intelligence is facilitated and expanded rather than limited and inhibited. While developing curriculum, it is important to keep these environmental conditions in mind. This also shows that developing such a curriculum for non-gifted students will help develop giftedness within their brains. Our third theme focuses on the skill of writing. Since we are focusing on teaching the gifted ELA curriculum to non-gifted students, 3 main topics that emerge are reading, writing, and research skills. Writing is most talked about in the gifted literature. Garrett and Molson wrote in their article in 2011 that a positive and supportive home environment is not necessarily the norm in the childhood experience of gifted adult writers. Common themes in the lives of contemporary American writers included experiencing unconventional family life and family traumas. This is interesting because often we tend to think gifted students are the ones who have a nurturing family environment, but we fail to look at how students from these unconventional families are often the best of writers because of their experiences. Their experiences can act as great writing prompts and an outlet for emotional expression. Gifted programs often include a ton of research for their students. Given that gifted students are curious and like to do their own research, the curriculum and instruction for gifted students involves a lot of research, both digital and paper. Having such research skills can benefit non-gifted students to improve their general knowledge and encourage them to ask questions. Our fourth theme is the identification and the evaluation process of the gifted students. Lawrence wrote in her article in 2009 about how gifted students are mostly identified through teachers' recommendations, grades, and sometimes identification by parents. Ideally, the 5 types of giftedness, as stated by the federal government, intellectual, academic, visual and performing arts, leadership, and creativity, should be the factors that play a role in the identification process. It is unfortunate, however, that factors such as social class and racial backgrounds also play a role in the selection process. This is the reason why program evaluations are so important for gifted programs. They provide us with the outcomes, effectiveness, and improvements for the programs. Evaluations also ensure that no student is left behind because of class, race, and ethnicity. Our fifth theme is role of social class and race within gifted education. Lawrence continues to say in her article that giftedness is not skewed by race, ethnicity, or culture, but this is not true for schooling. In other words, students from all backgrounds can be gifted, but in gifted programs, this is not the case. Tying this back to the nature versus nurture debate, Lawrence, in her 2009 article, suggests that giftedness can be nurtured according to the factors such as health, wealth, ethnicity, race, gender, place in family, culture, location, and moment in history of a child's birth. These factors play a role in whether the child is likely to be identified as gifted or not. Health. A child's health at birth and the mother's health can stay with the child lifelong. Any physical disabilities may prevent the child from being identified. Wealth. Socioeconomic status of a student will determine whether he or she has the resources that he or she needs to obtain the environmental conditions that we talked about earlier. Ethnicity. Teachers' biases can play a role in whether he or she identifies a gifted child despite of their ethnicity. Race. Just like ethnicity, racial biases can affect the likelihood of a child being identified as gifted. Gender. Whether a child is male or female, giftedness cannot be limited to any specific gender. Place in family. Whether a child is the first or the last among 5 or 6 siblings can have an impact on the resource that the child is provided with. For example, the first child may have struggled to gain academic success, but the last child may have gotten it easy. Culture. Some cultures value education, while some may not. Location. A location or place has a huge influence on identification of the gifted students. There are differences in how rural and urban education works. Lastly, moment in history of a child's birth. For example, a war child may be mentally disturbed or be perceived as academically challenged, and this may prevent him or her from being identified as a gifted child. When we provide non-gifted students with the tools that we provide our gifted students with, they as well succeed in academics. Our sixth theme is the professional development of gifted teachers. As we learn about the identification and evaluation processes of gifted programs, it is important to continue to try to improve ourselves as program facilitators. The main stakeholders involved are administrators, teachers, parents, community members, and the students themselves. It is important for all of us to get together and improve our gifted programs and extract its benefits for the non-gifted students. Careful training of the teachers of all students is significant in challenging and improving our education. Our last theme is the use of technology in gifted instruction. As we know, social media has become so common in our students' lives today. We need to embrace this so we can relate to our students better. Some examples of social media that can be used in classrooms are Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Skype. It may sound controversial to some students, but we can use these as tools of instruction and turn it into a positive thing in our classroom. Muldreen explains in his article in 2007 how gifted students can be educationally enriched through a technologically advanced classroom. Gifted students especially are known to be more technologically inclined. Therefore, their curriculum involves online learning games, hyperlinks to lessons, and virtual field trips. This type of technology can be taught to the non-gifted students as well to boost their confidence and give them a new perspective on learning. As we conclude, we learned that curriculum for the gifted should involve high-order thinking skills, problem-solving skills, and critical thinking. Instruction for the gifted should involve use of technology and creative instruction. This project identified the impacts and outcomes of teaching gifted curriculum to non-gifted students. Mike Lambert encourages us to consider how the unique qualities of gifted students can be embodied in all activities using all of the resources we have. The benefits of teaching gifted ELA curriculum to non-gifted students are positive, and they're very beneficial for our education system today. Here is a list of my references. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed my capstone project.